All right, folks, it's that time. Doors for Momentum enrollment are going to close at midnight. So now is your chance. The price will never be this low again as I raise it every single launch and every year as the value in the community builds over time. So if you are looking for incredible momentum, if you want to set your 2020 business strategy and super smart systems, I really encourage you to join us. Now is the time. We will walk you through everything you need to know to really take your business to the next level. And most of all, to join a community of friendtors, people who are rooting for you, holding you accountable, encouraging you, giving you feedback, weighing in on programs and products that you're creating. That is what I love about Momentum and something that I look forward to every single week whenever I log into the community on Facebook. And as soon as you enroll, you'll also get 5 years of archives that you can just have a blast strolling through as you go. Remember, we do have a 30-day, 100% money back guarantee. So if you log in, you look around, you start interacting and attending my twice monthly calls, and you have a change of heart, no worries. No worries and no questions asked. We only want you to be there if you are jumping out of your chair with glee, excited. So if you are looking to free up time and earn more recurring revenue with ease and joy, I would love for you to join us. Just head on over to pivotmethod.com/momentum. What's next? This is a question we're all having to ask and answer more frequently. I'm Jenny Blake, your host of the Pivot Podcast and author of Pivot, The Only Move That Matters Is Your Next One. For show notes from this episode, visit pivotmethod.com/podcast. If change is the only constant, then let's get better at it. Here we go. Welcome back to the Pivot Podcast. I am so thrilled and excited to be welcoming Mike Michalowicz back to the show. Mike was here to talk about one of his previous books, Surge, in episode 37. But I cannot even begin to tell you, those of you who are listening, and Mike, you're here now, this man has changed my life. And I don't even think, Mike, you know the extent to which we met over margaritas.
Yeah, you remember that?
Of course I remember that.
Yeah.
Over an author dinner that my friend Dory Clark, our mutual friend, and in fact, it was the first Dory dinner that I attended. And so thanks to that dinner, I'm such good friends with Dory. And then you, Mike, have just been a friggin' game changer.
We were sitting next to each other and they're like, who wants drinks? And you're like, a margarita. I'm like, this girl's awesome. And then I look at everyone else. Everyone else like, no, club soda, please. I'm like, what? Is this like a group of wimps? Like, what's going on? So then I'm like, I think we shared a guacamole and got a couple margaritas. I'm like, thank God there's someone here who respects Mexico because everyone else doesn't.
Although now I see in Fix This Next, which we're going to talk about today, it's a tequila gimlet. Talk to me about this.
Oh my God, I love gimlets. Have you ever had one?
No.
So it's a margarita without the sugar. And so gimlet is a popular old drink, and all it is a freshly squeezed lime in the pure essence of it over ice, and then the liquor of your choice. So you could have a vodka gimlet or a tequila gimlet. It's, I would say, 1/4 to 1/3 lime juice, freshly squeezed, maybe a little splash of club soda, but that's for weaklings, and then your tequila or alcohol of choice. And to me, it's the essence of a margarita without that sweetness that can get you kind of puckering and a nasty hangover.
That's the best part. I know, because a bad margarita, they're really too sweet.
Way too sweet.
Yeah.
And they're packed with color. And you know.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to have to do a 5-year reunion, I think, of this dinner.
So I just got into old. Yeah, we should. First of all, we should do that.
Yeah.
And I've moved even on further now to old fashions. So we got a bar at our house. And here's a tip. If you don't want to drink, don't get a bar for your house.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So I'm this closet mixologist, and now I'm making drinks. And to really nail the old fashioned, I had to go for probably 30 to 40 iterations. And you can't leave a drink like abandoned. So I didn't, by the way, it wasn't like I made 40 old fashions in one night. This was over months. But then I really nailed it. And then it tastes so good. It's like, I can't just have one old fashioned. I got to make it for everybody. And then, so I noticed I was drinking more because of my old fashioned penchant.
Totally. And then when you have this obsession and then you start to look forward to it, probably you're like, hey, where's that?
Oh, totally. You get the fireplace going. And I'm a college football fan. If there's football, a fireplace, and a bar, it's like, oh my God, game over. It's heaven for me, but it's also dangerous because I won't stop easily.
Well, I'm happy to know. So this is the secret sauce that has you like churning out such brilliant books every year.
It's drinking.
Okay. We are going to get into your newest book, Fix This Next. Mm-hmm. The subtitle is Make the Vital Change That Will Level Up Your Business. And
that's very podcasty.
Yeah, vital change. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, speaking of which, if you don't listen to Mike's podcast, Entrepreneurship Elevated, right?
Yes.
You have so many. It's so funny. Like you just talk about having fun with the podcast. You're like, there's a soundboard. It's incredible.
Yeah. And we play games. We do name the fake product, and I make up a fake product among two other absurd products, but they're real, and people have to guess it. And what's happened, Jenny, is it's caused this bifurcation of our listeners. We have half the community is like, I just love the content. I just want to hear the interview. Another half is like, I don't even listen to interview. I just go to the game and the horsing around. So now we split this community. We got to figure out how to manage both.
Well, it is really funny. And I was just about to bring that up because there are some times where I'm like, okay, skip. And I get to the meat of it. And then there are other times where it's so entertaining and it has nothing to do with you. It's like whatever mood I'm in.
Yeah, of course.
I know you've said that because it is. I could see how you'd have two different types of listeners that are in different moods when they
totally.
They're very distinct.
Yeah, and totally. And what we think is the new format that we're considering is changes that the beginning part is just the interview and get right into it, and then the end part is the fun and joking around, because we kind of pack on both ends like an Oreo cookie. There's a little joking around and fun in the beginning and the end, and the cream's in the middle, but it's a little bit hard to skip and navigate. So that's our little tweak.
I love that. Yeah. I really love that. And then as Neil Pasricho calls it, the end of the podcast club. So then when you're joking around at the end, the people who have listened, heard the interview, they're in the end of the podcast club. They just love it anyway.
I like that. Yeah, you like that. Yeah. You know, my wife listens to Dax Shepard. Shepherd. And so I've been listening closely to that, and it's just interesting how they package it.
I was just thinking about that show because he does a great job, surprisingly. Even if any of you listening were not previously a Dax Shepard superfan, his podcast is amazing.
It is.
And they have he calls his soulmate, which I wonder what his wife thinks about that. Kristen, her last name is escaping me. She's famous. What the heck is his last name?
Oh, Dax, Christian. Oh, shoot.
Right?
Oh, my God. This is what do not Google it. Whatever you do not Google it, because one of us is going to shout it out.
Someone in Momentum.
I can picture her face.
I know. Me too. She's in the...
No Googling. You got to promise. No Googling. We just got to think of it. Okay.
I'll not Google. We need to call for an assist. But basically, Dax says, and now for the fact check with my soulmate, Monica Podwin. And I wonder, like, is your wife cool with that? But, they do a great fact check, and she definitely calls out anything that he might have gotten wrong. So if we had a fact checker right now, they would be laughing at us and ready to go.
Yeah, that's right. They do the fact check. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. And I don't know, the soulmate thing. Like I think it can be perceived two ways. I think people can perceive it romantically, but a soulmate really just means, I think, in simpatico in a extraordinary way, but not necessarily around romance,
right?
So I see how they could be.
You're cool with it. Well, it's just such a singular expression. My soulmate. I know. It's not like one of my soulmates, or That's why I would. It's just funny every time I hear it. But hey, kudos. And I'm with you. We have so many. My friend Penny, we've done a bunch of podcasts. Calls them soul groups or soul travelers. Like, where there's really a group that all of our souls have reincarnated together. I started to say in the intro how much you've changed my life. I just specifically want to call out. And what's funny is that I actually blurbed Profit First when you republished it. And even at the time I wrote that blurb, I had yet to fully, I was way into it, but it's a gift that keeps on giving. So I have Profit Firsted my business. Then I clockworked it. And that was like the whole theme of 2019. And every time you write a new book, I'm just jumping for joy because I voraciously consume it. I can't put it down. And these are business books, people, okay? And yet still, I can't put it down. So Fix This Next came out. And I was like, yes, we immediately are doing it for the Momentum Book Club, which this is our second pilot episode. Momo is on live. They get to come off mute and ask questions in the second half. So we're book clubbing it. I wrote to my team, like, everybody needs to read Fix This Next. And they've just been my solace, my comfort, my guides. And most of all, like, this stuff really works. It works.
Thank you. Now I think you're like my soulmate, or at least, yeah. So
I would be honored if that were true.
It
Like,
feels
I
that
think
way.
you're my soulmate, but you're the one that's guiding me from afar. So it's one of those weird
Guacamole.
situations.
Yeah. So, thank you for saying that. First of all, I'm honestly, truly flattered. It's I don't know if I'll ever get tired of that. I've been so blessed now to meet readers and hear their stories of success. And I thought at a certain point I'd get numb to it, but it hasn't. Actually, the reverse has happened. Like, I kind of feel like when Taylor Swift walks into a stadium and she does that, like, oh my God, like, that's how I feel. Like, I think she's being legit, because I'm experiencing that too. It actually is so surprisingly exciting and happy that I feel. But what the essence is, and the kind of the secret behind the scenes here, every book I've written is something that I get inquiries from readers about, and this is the big and, I also need it for my own business. Like, I needed to figure out how to be profitable in the worst effing way. I needed to figure out how to run a business efficiently, and implemented it. And what I found is when you write a book, like you wrote Pivot, when you write a book, like, you got to live by those principles. Otherwise, you're seen as a charlatan.
Right.
And maybe that's not the right word, charlatan. But if I'm not doing clockwork, people are like, what? Could you imagine I don't use profit first in my own business? I'm like, yeah, everyone else needs it, but I don't. Like, no. Like, I live by every book I write. So it's become the ultimate enforcement mechanism for fixing the things I need to fix.
I 100% agree. I've always said when you sign on to write a book, because the book kind of chooses you at the same time, it's a soul thing. And you just sign up for that front row seat to whatever that topic is. Like, if you thought you were an expert when you started writing the book, just wait and see what shows up in life and business during the book writing journey, because that's when it really gets locked in.
And it's so bizarre. It's like I'll be writing, and then I'll have to start researching things because you need a story, right? So I'm writing something. I'm like, how does this play out in, like, basketball, for example? And then so I go down these. They're not even rabbit holes. They're research holes. So here's an example, and I'm not sure which one of my books I included it in, but I was working on one of my books, and I said to myself, like, what would they do in basketball to simplify? So I think it was clockwork. What would make the process more simple? And so I typed in, like, simplifying basketball, and through this kind of rambling research, I come across this guy. I can't remember his name now. Pete somebody, who was the last NBA basketball player to throw underhand, like granny style.
Wow.
Like bending the knees, and he was one of the most prolific scoring basketball players of all time. And it was because of this technique, throwing underhand. Well, I don't know if it was Magic Johnson or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but some famous basketball player. There's only one basketball player ever to score 100 points in a single game. So that's unheard of. Happened in one game. And in that one game, say it was Magic Johnson, in that one game, he actually threw underhand. Now, you don't use underhand on the court. You use it when you're doing the free throw shots. But the underhand throw, the mechanics are so simplified. So if you throw overhand a basketball, you have two hands on it. You have your guide hand. So I'm right-handed. My right hand would be the throwing hand. My left hand's my guide hand. Both elbows are bent. It's over my head. I'm looking up. I have to bend my knees, and I push up with my knees. I extend my elbows and flip my wrists. So there's all these different kind of joints that are moving at one time. Well, underhand, you actually grab the ball over top. That's the key. So it's not under the ball. It's over the top of the ball, and you grab it, and you simply bend at your back. You bend your knees slightly, and then you keep your arms extended in a perfect vertical line, and you throw the ball and it gets this backspin. But now the mechanics are you're moving your knees and you're moving your shoulder joints, but nothing else, no wrists, no elbows, and it reduces the variables, and therefore the effectiveness is so much higher. I was like, oh my gosh. So I include that story and I continued to research it. And I must have spent, I don't know, hours and hours researching and making some calls to learn about this process. And that's what I love about authorship. Authorship, it turns us on these things like I would never have experienced or researched otherwise.
Speaking of metaphors, you also, on that note, researched beehives. And
yeah, I did.
In Clockwork, the central metaphor is a beehive, but more specifically, finding one's own queen bee role.
Yeah.
What's the role that you and only you can do? Your unique genius.
Yeah.
And how do, and I love how you say in that book, the queen bee role is a role. It's not a person.
It's not.
So I, Jenny, am not the queen bee, even though it feels that way of my business. I'm in the queen bee role, similar to you, of thought leadership and big ideas and systems, smart, simplified systems and strategies that really make a difference. So we're very similar in that way. And I love how you describe your journey. And I've watched you on this journey of, I didn't know you when you started your big multi-million-dollar businesses, but even with those, you say sometimes you have the same problems, but with more zeros on the end. You were still finding your ups and downs in this big roller coaster and getting in debt, getting out of it. And then in more recent years, you've recognized that your queen bee role that you're serving is really ideas and books, and specifically ones that have super practical tools that help eradicate entrepreneurial poverty.
Wow, you really, you know my whole shtick.
I got your shtick. But yeah, I'd love for you to talk about making that transition for you as a business owner and how you've structured your life and your work to honor that role for yourself.
So, the queen bee role, you nailed it, is not a person, and it's not even our own individual zone of genius. It's really what the organization's zone of genius is, which in a small business is typically the owner. So that runs in parallel. But at a certain point, if we want to leave our business in respects to having it as a job and be a true owner of the business needs to own that zone of genius. And so the QBR, by the way, I translated that it's called biomimicry. Biomimicry is where you look at Mother Nature and you translate what she's done back to business or some aspect of your life. And the argument for the power of biomimicry is Mother Nature has spent billions of years figuring out something. Instead of us spending 10 minutes and shooting from the hip, why don't we take billions of years of research and employ that? So, the analogy with beehives are bees are very efficient at scaling, and the critical role or the queen bee role of a beehive is the production of eggs. That's what matters. And the confusion with queen bees and also in business is, that means the queen bee is the most important bee, which she's not. She's just serving the most important role. If she fails to produce eggs, they will spawn a new queen bee and get rid of the prior one. So in my businesses, I was doing this for myself. You're writing a book, you're held accountable to your own book. We looked at our queen bee role. I found a way to identify it, by the way, for businesses that I didn't include in the book. I only found this out afterwards, and I'm pseudo desirous of rewriting that book, doing a revised and expanded version. I'm just not there yet. There's a few more things I want to nail down. But the quicker way of finding it is to identify what is the promise of your brand? Like, what's your company's promise to the world? It's got to be a singular promise, the biggest promise, the guarantee, the commitment, or whatever you want to say. And so as an author, for me, I realized that my commitment is to make entrepreneurship simple or simpler, to simplify the journey. So with that commitment, entrepreneurship made simple. I even have that on my website now. With that promise, I ask, of all the things that our organization does, what one activity, and the QBR is always a singular activity, what one activity most supports that commitment to our clients? And for me, it's writing books. I need to write books that make entrepreneurship simple. Now, just like you, I do public speaking, I do podcasts, we send out drip campaigns with videos and a little bit of content here and there. All these things are contributing to making entrepreneurship simple. But of all those things I do, only one can be the most important. And so I could say, it's writing books. I could say, screw writing books, no one really reads anymore. I'm really going to crank up my speaking engagements. I'm really going to be just speaking all the time, and I'll write books, but they'll be crappy because I'm not going to spend any time on it. I would argue, in that case, I've now compromised my QBR. I'm saying, yes, let's not produce eggs anymore. Let's just live in the beehive. I will start to very quickly get a reputation as a bad author or a poor author. Like, oh, these books are hack jobs put together. Yeah, he does public speaking, but his books suck. And my career, my business, over time would start to degrade and then die out. So the QBR provides the survival mechanism for the organization, or the thriving mechanism. And so the flip scenario is too, I could say, I'm going all in on the books. I'm going to stop speaking. I'm not even doing more podcasts, but I'm going to write life-changing books. I'm going to put every ounce of my energy there. I'd argue my business may not scale the same way, but because I've devoted myself to writing excellent books, the heart of the organization stays constant, and therefore the organization will stick around. So it was that realization of the importance of books. There's one last part, is I've also realized I painted myself in the corner because I'm the one writing the books. And if I'm the one writing the books, the day I stop doing it, the organization stops delivering on its QBR. So I can make two choices now. I can continue to write the books myself, or I can find a way to do it alternatively. And one option is ghostwriting, but meaning you hire someone else to write your books. But it's so inconsistent with who I am that the authenticity would be lost and the books would not be the quality. So that's options out. But I discovered another option. There's these book series like the For Dummies series, for example. And they're written by different books, but it's under one genre. So I'm like, I could write the For Entrepreneur series. So I gave my first stab at this. I wrote a book called Profit First, as you were talking about earlier. And now there's 3 or even 4 published derivative versions of Profit First. There's Profit First for attorneys, Profit First for contractors, Profit First for e-commerce providers, written by different authors under my brand, but required 1/1000th of the effort because it was just giving them a little bit of direction on an outline, and they're off to races. But I still derive the core deliverable. I'm still benefiting a community, now a specific community. It's still expanding the brand. It's still generating more revenue. I don't have to do the work myself. So that's how at the end of the day, we have to make a choice. Once we identify clearly what the QBR is, do we want to serve it ourselves, which keeps us trapped because you can't grow beyond that, the company is stuck, or are we willing to release the QBR for other people to do?
That's what's been so interesting to watch in your journey, at least from what I've seen the last few years, where you almost now have these sub businesses.
Yes.
So there's a Clockwork business, there's a Profit First business, and now I see you shaping the Fix This Next business.
Yeah.
And I know you, Mike, have a shell company called Obsidian Launch.
I do.
But what's it like running all these sub businesses, or have you taken yourself out so effectively that other people really own them and you have some kind of revenue share?
Yeah. So I have, in the different businesses to different degrees, have removed myself. I will tell you the ultimate shortcut to do this, but maybe I'll say that's a cliffhanger. It's actually just a changing of one word, which has been of the greatest impact on me and how my businesses operate. Literally just changing one word. So I'll share that as my big cliffhanger after I share the other story. So here's how it's affected me. My business is, I don't operate them. For every business, there is a president, including for Obsidian Launch, which is just simply a shell company. So I wrote a book called The Pumpkin Plan. There is a company that acquired the rights and gave me a licensing fee for that, and then pays me a percentage of the revenue. What I need, my sole responsibility back to that organization, is to sell as many Pumpkin Plan books as possible, because the greater the awareness around the Pumpkin Plan, the more consultants they bring on. Profit First, the exact same arrangement. A little bit different. I actually have equity in that business, but that was just how we had to structure it. But there's a president for that company, and that person's responsible. His name's Ron. Is responsible to grow profit first to its greatest effect, and I share in the revenue. And Clockwork, which has been the most efficient, no coincidence there, but the most efficient transfer of a business. It was acquired by, the license for Clockwork was acquired by Adrienne Dorison, a entrepreneur in Florida, and run like Clockwork, her own organization around the license. And they're in their first full year into it, achieved $1 million in revenue by providing training classes around Clockwork. They did is they buy the license. So there's a upfront fee, and then pay me a percentage of revenue into perpetuity. And my job is to simply promote the books, because when the more the platform it grows and the more awareness is around about that stuff, someone reads a book, then the first question people have after reading a business book is, am I doing it right? People read Profit First. Like, okay, I read Profit First, but am I doing it right? Or am I even doing it? I read Clockwork, but am I doing it right? So these training companies and consulting organizations become the outlet for it. And the last step was with Obsidian, which is the holding company for all the different books and licenses, and certain what I call pet projects or guinea pig projects, because I'm writing a new book now and we need to start guinea pigging it today. And so Obsidian is the test bed for it, and we're doing activity around that. That company has a president. Her name's Kelsey Ayers, and she runs the company, the day-to-day operations, the HR. She leads all of it. And here's the cliffhanger. So I used to call myself an entrepreneur. It's my favorite word. It still is my favorite word in the English language. But the word entrepreneur has become so bastardized with hustle and grind and hard work and sacrifice and all this stuff. It's become the perception of entrepreneur is the polar opposite of what it was. An entrepreneur is someone who organizes the resources around them to achieve a vision. So they organize their employees, if you have some, your clients, your vendors, your technology, all that stuff to achieve an outcome that you have set. And since it's now has turned to hustle and grind, I'm like, I don't want to be the person carrying the business on my back. I've taken on a new label, and it's shareholder. And so this is what I'm now challenging entrepreneurs, Jenny, to use. And I challenge you too, Jenny. Next time you're like a cocktail party or something, and someone says what you do, don't say I'm an entrepreneur or an author or any of those things. Say you're a shareholder in a small business, and watch that person spit out their tequila gimlet. Going, what? What the hell's that? And my response when I started saying this was the same. Like, I don't even know what I just said. But what a shareholder is, like I own stock in Ford. When Ford sends me a distribution check, I don't go back down to Ford and say, hey, I got to work for this. I got to work a few hours. What I do with Ford as a shareholder is I simply render my opinion through votes, and then they send me a distribution check. Well, that's what my business is. That's what I want my businesses to do, that I render influence over them, direction, ideas, thoughts, votes, and then the business returns a paycheck to me. I don't want to be working within my business at all. And so I changed that term. I've started to behave more and more consistently with that. Now, one last thing, the beautiful thing about being a shareholder in a small business is you have the right to insert yourself in the way that gives you joy. And I love to write books. I love doing the call we're doing right now. Like I hope people are getting value, but I'm just love bullshitting and talking about this stuff. And so as a shareholder, I have the freedom to do what I want, when I want with my business, but I'm not beholden to support my business.
That's such a powerful change. And I can see exactly how you've made that transition, and even how you define financial freedom is that you've accumulated enough where your money makes money. And that's a hustle, grit, grind, as you call it, trying to keep up with the entrepreneur Joneses.
Oh, you like that? Yeah.
I loved that. I laughed out loud. I'm like, oh,
Penguin wanted to cut that out.
What?
Isn't that funny? Well, you went through this. I think we had the same editor.
Yeah.
You were writing your book. So the funny thing is, there were a wonderful company. I love them. And
They are great.
my editor was extraordinary. The thing is, they're not entrepreneurs. So when they saw that, they're like, no one will know what an Entrepreneur Jones is. I'm like,
Oh, it's
what?
so good. Oh my God.
I'm like, but it's this need, that this necessity we have as entrepreneurs to keep up with more than just our neighbors. It's the other entrepreneurs. You can never satisfy. Like, you don't get that.
No.
They're like, no, we don't think anyone will. I said, we're freaking keeping it. So that's
Good
one
on
of like
you.
10 to 15 things I fought for to keep.
Thank goodness, because those little bon mots or make your books so funny and
Thank you.
personal. And Entrepreneur Jones is, oh my, we talk about this in Momentum all the time of looking at what other people are doing and trying to pull back from other people's launches or best practices or revenue.
Oh my God, it's the worst thing to do.
Yeah.
And so many people, because it is the Entrepreneur Joneses, there's so much bullshit going on. There's so much. So many people report their stuff, and it's chalked up with ego and artificialness, and maybe not even with negative intent or harmful intent, just with proudful intent. And then the next person says, I got to do that plus some. And then, it's such a dangerous trap.
Well, and shout out to Sarah Santa Croce, who's in Momentum. She has a podcast called The Gentle Business Revolution, where she's debunking all of that.
That's so cool.
And I don't have to tell you, you wrote Profit First, and you say it again in Fix This Next, that the definition of profit is cold hard cash that the shareholders, there's that word, can use for themselves in any way they want, such that using it will not negatively impact the continued healthy operations of the business. That's a long thing for me to weave in to say that so much of the Entrepreneur Joneses, people are reporting top line revenue, not profit. You can make $1 million. Look what happened with WeWork. You can earn $1 billion, but if you spend $2 billion, you have no profit. You're in the red. And that does not get clearly stated on a lot of these online businesses.
Of course not. No. And it literally is that simple. It's the revenue and the money left over, which is the profit. And we think there's a lot more complexity, but if you make one bill and you spend 2 bills, you're done. Stick a fork in you. And what I think also is people don't understand. I didn't. So when I say people, I'm talking about me. I didn't understand that sales translates directly to stress. And here's what I mean. Here's the effect, and I'll tell you how it gets there. So the more sales your organization has, the more stressed out the owner is, inevitably. And in the most cases, if they haven't mastered profit, it's a sure thing. Here's the reason. Sales translates to organizational responsibility. The more stuff my company sells, the more responsibility put on my organization. I have to deliver on the goods or services now. Well, the more goods or services I have to deliver, the more weight the entrepreneur carries, because most entrepreneurs are in the grind and hustle mode. So more sales, more organizational stress, which means more owner stress because they're the superhero swooping in, and which means the owner is going home having near heart attacks or literal heart attacks. The problem is we're ignoring profit, and many businesses think that we can sell our way to profit, which is even worse. We're saying we can stress ourselves out even more, and one day some profit will magically arise. So I'm not impressed. I used to be, but I'm not impressed when a company says they do 1 million or 10 or 50 or 100 million. Actually, I just had someone in my office like, "Oh, we're a $300 million company," and listen, I don't roll my eyes and say, "Oh, like, I don't think they're bragging." They just told me the fact. But I'm like, I asked them. I said, "Hey, what's the real number?" It was funny. This person says, "I have a $300 million company." I'm like, "Oh, that's great." I said, "But I'm really curious about the real number. How profitable is it?" Like, "Oh, it's a shit year. We're not doing so good." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So the reality is, you have a business that's not doing so good. Now that's something we can work with and resolve. But if we hide behind the gross revenue, it's just a fog. It's just a smoked mirror.
Thank you for sharing that. And that's Profit First, is you have to set the profit aside first for yourself. And by the way, if you go to the show notes for this episode, listeners, pivotmethod.com/160, I'm going to give you my financial modeling template, which has some Profit First tabs. Always with you. Credit to you, Mike. So it always has a link to the book.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Don't worry, but I found it helpful to pencil these things out. And even someone asked a question about what banks I use. That's not in the spreadsheet, but you can get the sheet, pivotmethod.com/160. And before we open it up, because this is our Momentum Book Club of the month, and like I said, the Momo's on live and they'll get to ask questions here soon. You were mentioning, something that even you struggled with. And that's what's so so wild about running a business. And I had this aha when I was reading Clockwork, but you really said it explicitly in Fix This Next. And in Fix This Next, you say, the DNA for all businesses is nearly identical.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same problems with the extra zeros at the end. And you said, when it comes to marketing and branding, different is good. But in the basic structure, all businesses have the same biology.
That's right.
Now, 2019 was my big year of stepping back, restructuring, creating more systems, more scale, clockworking.
Nice.
With eMyth Revisited, Built to Sell,
yeah.
Clockwork, I had this really powerful combination of books. And I have to say, Mike, I got a little deflated at one point because I'm like, I've been here struggling for 8 years to do something that is already outlined in every single one of these books, that my business is it's not unique. It is not different. What the hell have I been doing for these last 8 years? And I was just kind of honestly embarrassed that I even worked at Google. I went back, I listened to one of their earnings calls, and I went and looked at the org chart as it was in 2006 when I started. And I thought, I worked at a company that is one of the most successful in history. And why couldn't I figure out these departments for my own business? Like, I was frustrated. So now you're turning into my business therapist. But I know you shared a story, a similar one, of a guy that had been in business 13 years that was like, why am I still struggling?
Yeah.
Why do we struggle if if all businesses have 98% same DNA?
Yeah. So you're very human. That's the label. We all do that. And I think the reason we struggle is it's human nature to throw complexity at difficulty. So when we are not achieving a result we want in the time we want, we will throw complexity at it, saying, oh, the solution, I haven't achieved the solution, where actually we just haven't had the persistence or patience. So a lot of businesses throw complexity. The second thing is it's human nature to get into routine, which then becomes habit. And habit is a very comforting thing. There's a phenomenal book by Charles Duhigg called Power of Habits. And he talks about this click whirl process we go through. And basically, we'll do a behavior repeatedly because there's always a reward, even if the reward looks like a negative consequence. Like, so if someone smokes, I think he uses that example. Everyone knows if you're a smoker, the consequence is ultimately your demise, in potentially a horrific way. But the reward, of course, for smoking is not the long-term consideration, it's the near-term. It's like, oh, I felt a little bit chill, but relaxed, maybe cool, whatever the psychological benefits are. So there's always a short-term reward. So in business struggle, there's a short-term reward. A lot of us that are in this kind of superhero mentality where we swoop in and do things, you get that pat in the back from someone in the office, or you give yourself the pat in the back. Wow, I swooped in and saved the day again. It's the worst thing you do for your business long-term because it's so dependent upon you. I swooped in and fixed the day again, so I give myself a pat in the back. So many of us get stuck in that pattern. Then to get out of it, we say, well, I've been stuck here so long. If I want to get out of this, can't be a simple change. It has to be complexity, because we always default to complexity. So the only way to support complexity is by saying, well, my business is so different, so odd, no one can figure it out. And that's why I haven't figured it out. And so we put all these justifications and reasons. What I found in my research, both anecdotal and technical, that I would say 99% of businesses, all businesses, are identical. So you could take a pizza shop, and you could take a proctologist, and you could take a manufacturing plant, and I would say 99% of the process is the same. They're all actually manufacturers. All of them are taking an input of ingredients. It could be the patient, it could be the dough, it could be the items. It's going through a sequence of activities and then delivering an end product or a motion. So the end product for like a consulting business, like if I'm an accountant, what I'm delivering at the end of the day is maybe not a physical manufactured product, but I'm definitely creating an emotion of confidence, of direction, or whatever the sensations are. And it's the 1% that is unique. But that's like humanity. Like if we did the biological makeup of me and you and 1,000 other people at the most molecular level and went through all of us, we'd see that we're 99% the same. It's only the 1% that we see the difference. Oh, male, female, because you can see the external effects of that. You can see the skin color, height, weight. But that's literally the 1% of the difference. But that's the visual outward facing part. And so businesses are the same. When we look at them from the outside, we see the 1% different, the weight, the sex, the skin color, and we place this judgment of that's a very unique business. It's very different. And even internally, you say we're very unique. Every person's unique. And the reality is that's bullshit. People aren't that. I mean, we are unique in that 1%. There's a massive amount of differences there. But when it comes to the essence of the human makeup, we're the same. When it comes to the essence of business makeup, we're all the same. And the advantage here then is, for humans, medicinal care, it's pretty much the same. If you have a headache, everyone can take an aspirin or an ibuprofen. Like it works for basically everybody. And the reason is because we're all made the same. Could you imagine each person was unique and if they had a headache, everyone had their own medicine? It would never work. This is true for business too. When a business has its proverbial headache, the medicinal solution is the same. It's aspirin or ibuprofen. It's the exact same thing. So we just have to be careful about how jaded we are about what we see on the skin of a business and really appreciate that we're really all identical.
And I think it's also, Momentum is a community for heart-based business owners. And so I talk about the difference. Oftentimes our businesses are not started with scale in mind, ultimate scale, or even being a shareholder. It's a personal need connected to a personal mission. And at least in my case, I was delivering services for the good first half of the business prior to Pivot coming out. I was coaching, I was speaking. And as you said, even though I couldn't say this at the time, all those sales translated to me delivering more rather than working on the business, which is what 2019 was about.
What's so funny is many businesses are founded with an ideology. Maybe that's a version of a heart-based business. Yet we skip to that component. So in Fix This Next, I had those 5 levels of the business hierarchy of needs. And I would say when it comes to that ideology, we're talking about the impact level, the legacy level. But before that comes sales and profit and order. And many businesses skip that. Now, in the most common or traditional definition of a ideology-based business, I think of not-for-profits. We want to eradicate cancer. We want to help homeless people, and they have this ideology. Well, they skip this impact they're having on their community right away, but they ignore sales, which for a not-for-profit is donations, funding, right? That's the equivalent of sales. They ignore profitability, which and I've worked with not-for-profits, it is astonishing how they don't grasp they have to be profitable. That is their sustainability. They got to run a business that actually is able to retain money to support the doors being open in the future. And they don't work on efficiency. So what they try to do is they build this massive ideology, and it's like building a structure. If you're going to build a 5-story structure and you start building this massive fourth floor, but there's no foundation and there's no first, second, and third floor to put it on, when you drop the 4th floor on thin air, it comes crashing down and everything smashes. And that's why the failure rate is so high for not-for-profits. But that's why the failure rate's so high for for-profits, because they also go in with an ideology ignoring the necessity of sales and profit and organization order. I would argue these heart-based businesses, the impact you're having is so important, but you can't do that without these other elements. They're a necessity. And the greater the impact you want to have, the greater you have to be at sales and profit and order. And if you ignore those components, stick a fork in you. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time before it's going to collapse.
Right. And before it'll collapse, or you, the founder, are burnt out. And I know.
And resentful,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not sustainable. And in fact, there's so much good stuff here. I wish we had 5 hours together. But the business hierarchy of needs is a pyramid that Mike has translated from Maslow's hierarchy to your business. And just to recap for listeners, in order, it starts with sales. Without that, you don't even have a business. Profit, order, impact, and ultimately legacy. And what I love actually related to this is that the first question of the whole pyramid is lifestyle congruence. Do you know what the company's sales performance must be to support your personal comfort? And I finally made a calculator for that in the spreadsheet that I've shared at the show notes for 160, but I didn't do that. Like I never got crystal clear. And for me, I think that's the problem when you start out as a solopreneur or slash kind of a freelancer. You associate any check that comes into the business is mine. A check that comes in, I own. I, Jenny Blake, own. No, it's not like that. So now I'm an S Corp. I put myself on salary. I personally am only going to see a small part of that check because it goes to the operations of the business, the taxes, the profit account, which I have, and so the calculation and the number ultimately needs to be much higher to say, oh, what am I going to take home, not just to survive and live paycheck to entrepreneurial paycheck, but to support personal comfort.
I got a call from Jacob Limmer. So here's one thing I do. I don't know, Jenny, if you do this. I when I'm working on a book, I invite in my readers totally gratis. They got to pay for their travel, but invite them in for a day or two, even workshop, where I tell them I'm going to share my most raw thoughts and ideas, and I want you to guinea pig and experiment with them. So it could be good, it could be disaster. I want your critical feedback. So I did this as I was writing Fix This Next. We do it, and I think about 30 people showed up, and Jacob Limmer is sitting there in the back. He owns a roastery, which ironically, I mentioned in the book, he mocks the name of roasteries, even though he owns one. He makes coffee, and he owns 2 coffee shops in South Dakota, and they've been around for, I think it's 13 years. And I talked about this lifestyle congruence and the necessity to correspond the sales of an organization back to the founder or owner's needs. And my argument is the reason business owners start a business is typically for 2 reasons. Either one or the other, or in most cases, I found it's a combination. One is to do something that brings them joy. So as a heart-based business, you experience joy as you are of service or of impact to others. You get joy out of the work you do as you experience it, as you see the effect it's having. The second part for most or all business owners is then their life, the impact on their financials. The definition of that could be financial freedom, where we don't need to worry about day-to-day survival. So it's impact or to be of service and to experience financial freedom. And I said to ensure this financial freedom component, you need to know what you need for your base survivability, the base level of comfort, actually. So you're not worried. I'm not saying if you could make all the money in the world, how would you spend it and all the things you do with it? Just to support your current lifestyle as you define it as comfortable. What is it? And Jacob, being such a great student, he goes, I'm going to do this. He goes, I don't believe in it. And he reported back just his thoughts about hemming and hawing and this is bullshit. And he goes, I've been in business for 13 years. Do I really have to figure out how much I have to make at home? But every time he went through the Fix This Next analysis, it kept on pinpointing, you don't know what you need for your home. And he came up with what he called the Midwest lifestyle. He lives in the Midwest, South Dakota, and determined that and he's got a family, I think of 2 or 3 kids, $4,000 a month is adequate to support a lifestyle of base comfort for him and his family. Roof over the head, food on the table, enjoying the basics of life. And he called that number Midwest comfort. In New York City, that number's probably a different number. But he goes, that's my number. And he goes, once I had that, and then I corresponded to sales, he's like, oh my gosh, our sales are actually at the right number. We have enough sales to support this. I'm just not extracting the profit. So it gave him clarity. By doing that first step in the sales level, he then realized he had no other sales issues. Before this, he kept on simply saying, I need to sell more. I'm not making enough. I need to sell more. Once he realized what he needed truly to make, then he realized the sales are adequate to support it, but the profit isn't there for some reason. And he moved on to the profit level and subsequently resolved that.
And as you said, when we mistakenly think sales are the problem, it actually creates a tremendous amount of more work for the entrepreneur and for the business and complication. And it's
the most common response. It's the most common instinctual response that owners say, I need to sell my way out of this. And that's what my gut's telling me. And what I found is that our gut is a really, really bad compass for a business. For our own self-preservation, I think it's actually very effective. But for business preservation, it's not. Because if you look at it from our own vantage point, like you are neurologically wired into yourself. Like you, Jenny Blake, if you're walking down a dark alley and all of a sudden you feel the heebie-jeebies that you're going to get murdered, please turn around and walk out, because your senses, sight, smell, touch, all those things are triggering to give you this emotion saying, fight or flight. Well, go. But we're not neurologically wired into our business. So when we get the heebie-jeebies about a business situation, we are neurologically wired into the business, so we just make this assumption. And the easiest assumption is we need to sell more. Not profitable, we need to sell more. Not efficient enough, if we had more sales, it'd bring about efficiency. Not having enough impact on this world, we need to sell more. Entrepreneur after entrepreneur reverts to selling more, which adds more organizational stress and actually puts the company in a more dire situation than a healthy situation.
Thank you for, I want to put a pin in this, because as I read the intuition section, I have thoughts on that. And it's something that I thought it was so funny how you said that. You're like, you cannot rely on your intuition for your business, maybe for yourself. And I do think there's a way to do that, but before we get back to that, if we have time, I want to open it up to Kevin, who's here live. He's in our Momo book club. And Kevin has a podcast on the topic of burnout. So Kevin, if you could just come off mute, introduce yourself, tell us the name of your show. And I think it really ties in with the person who's at the helm of all of this. So over to you, Kevin.
All right. Hello. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right, great. Hey, it's nice to meet you, Mike.
Nice to meet you, Kevin.
Yeah, my name's Kevin Joseph. I'm the host of the podcast Talk Burnout with Kevin Joseph, where I talk to experts about ways to avoid and overcome burnout. Definitely at work, burnout is a very prevalent issue. And so
sure,
I talk to people and learn about different ways to avoid that and kind of get a handle on their own business and their own work. So I had a question for you about your book. My favorite parts of the book were the case studies using the Omen method, which I thought was a very practical way of looking at business problems. Can you talk a bit about how you came up with that method?
Yeah. So, it's so wild, by the way, Kevin, to hear you and Jane talking about the book, because the book doesn't. I know this will come out near the book release, but as we're recording this, the book hasn't come out yet. So that's really, to me, this is super cool, because you're the first person to ask me about the Omen method.
Nice.
So it derived from, there's a couple measurement methods. There's one called the OKR, which isn't, I cannot remember the author.
We used to use it at Google. Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. Outcome and key
William.
results.
Oh yeah. This is crazy. This happened to both of us twice, because he wrote a book on it, but Google had been using it for a long time.
Kristen Bell. Kristen Bell.
Yes.
I knew it would hit me.
Gosh.
Okay.
Good. Now you'll get this next one too.
Yes, I'll get the next one. It'll come to me in about an hour. So whoever wrote it. And then there's SMART, which is a very popular one, specific, measurable, and so forth. Well, Omen is a consolidated version of SMART. But SMART was designed to encompass also personal goals, and this is about specific business goals, where there's a team element. And SMART, which stands for specific, measurable, I think attainable, realistic, and time frame. I think that's it.
SMART was always so boring to me, by the way.
It's kind of boring and overwhelming, and it's for an individual. So Omen was designed for consideration of a team. Here's what it is. Once you pinpoint the vital need of your business, we're having a problem with our conversion. We get enough prospects. We should have enough prospects, but they're not converting. So we have a conversion issue into making these prospects clients. That's the problem. Then you do Omen, which is the objective. Well, the objective is to increase the conversion, but we would give it detail. So say I'm getting one new client a month. I want to get 5 new clients a month, because that would put me in congruence with my sales objectives once I understood my lifestyle congruence. So I need 5 new conversions a month. That's the objective. The M in Omen stands for the measurement. How are you going to measure it? And I already kind of specified it as I was saying the objective, which is 5 new clients. We're going to define it by a client, but you give it more specificity. Once the client makes the payment, so 5 new clients who've paid, that's the clear measurement of the result. E stands for evaluation, and it's really just getting a frequency. what I found in some businesses is we don't set a frequency to check in on our numbers. So it's arbitrary. It's like, oh, how are we doing on sales? Like that's literally the conversation periodically or randomly. So with the evaluation method, we're going to say every week or every day or every hour or every month is the frequency we're going to check in on it. And maybe for this, where we're looking at how many clients we engage a month, maybe monthly is the right setting. But for something like, website traffic and you have 1,000 visitors a day, maybe checking every hour is better. If I make a change within the first hour, can we start seeing the impact it has? If I wait a month or two and that change was not effective or is negative, well, holy cow, I'm in trouble. So E stands for evaluation frequency. And then N, nurture, is the involvement of the team. How can we allow ourselves, or how can we get insights from our team to drive better results and give ourselves the flexibility to set new objectives or new measurements? One problem I've seen people do is they write, the company is going to achieve $1 million more revenue this year, and they arrive at it however, and then the business is clearly not making that. Well, they then just say, well, we didn't achieve our goal. The nurture objective is to say, well, hold on, we're not trending toward $1 million. Why? What's going on? Is there something wrong? Or maybe something's right. Maybe this is the way it should be. We need to set a new measurement. Maybe say that $1 million additional revenue was not the right setting. It should have been 250, and we realize it's because of this reason, and setting a new goal. A lot of these goals are so static that the result is either we achieve it or we abandon it. And that's a problem. It should be either we achieve it or we determine why we're not achieving it and then reset it. And that's what nurture is about. So it came out of studying these other goal setting methods. And this I found to be the best way to involve the team and to simplify goal setting.
It came to me when you were saying nurture. John Doerr, Measure What Matters.
Oh, gosh, you're on fire.
And I didn't let myself look it up.
No, you can't. That's the rule. That's the rule, Jenny. Never.
The rule.
You cannot look it up.
I didn't look it up.
John Doerr. That's it.
John Doerr. Yeah. Measure What Matters.
Measure what matters.
Thank you for going through the Omen method. And you also mentioned something I just want to pull out and highlight, which is the whole point of the book, Fix This Next, is about identifying the vital need. And you say like the weakest link in a chain. If one link is about to break, the whole chain is going to snap. And that's often what's happening in our business. So that's the vital need. And then the rest of the book are all these amazing examples using the Omen method. So I'm glad, Kevin, thank you for bringing that up.
It's just funny, the weakest link. So I've been teaching now. I did a few presentations on Fix This Next. They're still very rudimentary. And as an author, at least what I found is the first year of a book's popularity, there's no speaking like on that topic. It really takes about a full year before people start requesting that for a keynote. But you want to start preparing a year in advance and presented it. And it's so funny. So I talked to this one company. They were a $25 million revenue company. They were I think a $6 million in profit, right? So that's a number that matters. So that's a 20% plus profit. So it was impressive. And they were just trying to fix everything at once. And I taught this process to them. And the owner, his name was Mike too, coincidentally, came up and said, oh my gosh, we got to find our weakest link. And he then emailed me the next day and just determined it was in the concept of role alignment. I talk about that in the book too, of getting everyone matching their talents, their capabilities to the tasks that need those talents, as opposed to matching people to titles. Your reception, your president, your sales. No, matching people to their talents. And the impact has been extraordinary on the top line, but also just the engagement of his employees. Where before he was trying to fix everything, it's just back to your point. It's that one link that, when resolved, will strengthen the entirety of the chain.
Absolutely. And I'm with you. I say on my team, I don't want anybody doing work that drains them. If you don't like the work, I'm not going to take it personally. Let me know. We'll solve the problem. We'll delegate it. We might get rid of it altogether. Yeah. There's no reason to have talented people miserable.
Oh my God.
No. Yeah. Sarah Santacroce, I mentioned her earlier, of the Gentle Business Revolution, submitted a question. She said, I loved the book, and especially the last part on heart-based promoters. It's the only way forward. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on the Company of One? That's a book Paul Jarvis wrote. And do your systems, Mike, apply to that concept? So what do you do with people who want to stay small and Company of One?
So a Company of One, I have not read that book, so shame on me. I have to presume it's about solopreneurs, just based upon that title, or micro business, right?
Yeah.
So I think the size of a business and the size of impact has no direct correlation, and shame on me if I ever felt that way. I believe the smallest physical size businesses have the greatest impact. And you've seen this, right? You've seen this in individuals that have this heroic impact. I'm just picking arbitrary names and no religious focus, but Gandhi or Mother Teresa. Like, you look at these people, and I would argue that Mother Teresa probably ran like, $100 million to $1 billion practice there in collecting donations, serving the poor, serving the community. So they were business people, but their operations, at least my very rudimentary understanding of the impact they'd done and how they did it, was an individual. But they all had one big component, and it was a big mission, a big purpose that others wanted to be involved in or supported. There's a lot about leadership. Like, everyone's a leader. Everyone and their mother is a freaking leader today. But I would argue that we all really thirst to follow. I do, and I think we all do. And I don't mean that in the negative context, which sadly is perceived like a follower. Oh, you're sheep. Like, oh, you get pushed around. No, I want to get involved in something that speaks to me, but without having to create it, invent it, support it. I just want to contribute in a way I want to contribute. And so when I started when I really got clear on my own purpose, which is to eradicate entrepreneurial poverty. Entrepreneurial poverty is that gap between this perceived success entrepreneurs have and the reality of the struggles. That gap that I call entrepreneurial poverty, and I am committed to close it. As I speak more and more about that and do more and more work around it, there are more and more people who are getting involved and supporting it. Just, I think it was last Friday, I did a keynote on Profit First. Yet I think 7 keynotes on Profit First were delivered that day because there was other people speaking on it. 2 clockwork presentations were done by Adrian's team and so forth. And some of people were speaking on Pumpkin Plan, the work I was doing. But they've taken ownership over it because it's not about Mike's book. It's about this mission to eradicate entrepreneurial poverty. And these people want to follow in a system that's already been developed. They don't want to recreate the wheel, but they see a part of their life's calling is complementing this arena, and they want to complement it by leveraging the system that's out there. So to answer this question a little more succinctly, hopefully, is it's not about how big the business is, it's how big the purpose is. And that has great impact. It's the purpose.
And I think one thing that at least I'm finding is I've always wanted to stay small but mighty, and sometimes systems and a team actually help serve that purpose.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have to be overly complicated, like growing just to grow or just to keep up with the Entrepreneur Joneses. But for me, at least, I did hit a point where I just wasn't able to have the impact and sort of scale and reach without getting a little more sophisticated in an infrastructure way.
I think small, when we say we want to be small, because I've said that too, it translates really into an emotion. There's something behind that. It's really not the size. It means I don't want to be stuck in a bureaucratic situation. Exactly. I don't want red tape.
It's freedom. I was just thinking that.
Right? And exactly. Clicks. I don't want clicks. So that's when I said, I don't want to be small. I don't want clicks. That was because my biggest business had 30 employees, which is a very small business. But once we passed about 10 employees, it started getting clicky, like the 2 factions and stuff. I'm like, I never want to go there again. And that was one fear. The other fear was
clicks, like on a on a URL or something.
Oh no, like
a with a Q. Yeah, 30 sounds massive to me. So
right. So I didn't want those type of clicks, and so I've been saying I want to be small. But then once I started to investigate, the reason behind it. No, I don't want to be small. I just don't want clicks to occur. I don't want to ever be in a position again where I need to generate the stress of generating money just to cover payroll was so overwhelming that my focus was just panicked about payroll. We had a $200,000 monthly payroll. And I remember like, gosh, if I don't get $200,000 in business in this week, I can't cover payroll. Like, I don't want that. So those were the definitions of it. And that started changing my mentality. Is I want to have great impact under these parameters where there's no panic about payroll. So cash flow has to be addressed the whole way, and Profit First is doing that now, and no clicks. And so we're very selective of how we hire and how we engage our team to avoid clicks. Now we only have 12 employees today, so we're not to where I was before, but we're click free as far as I can tell, and staying there because we've been very disciplined about it. So that's just the challenge I put out for anyone that wants to be small. You don't want to be small. You don't want certain things to happen, and define those clearly. That's what
it's very reassuring. It's also reassuring for me to hear you say, you even having had 30 employees at one point, the stress of payroll. And I feel that as well, even with only me on full-time payroll. And I'm like, oh, I've got to make payroll every month. And it really changed something once that happened. And I like hearing you. And I just interviewed Michael Stanier, who's stepping out of the CEO role of his company. And I love hearing about those of you, you have so much experience with different businesses scaling back. Like you're always sort of toggling and adjusting. And
it is comforting, right? So I like to hear those stories too. There's this misperception. I think it's a human default that I have, is looking at a person and filling in their backstory for them, right? So I'm having dinner with Dave Ramsey in next month, and I had the whole backstory. Like, here's this billionaire guy, and it was easy, but it's not really the story. And he's not always crushing it. Things aren't always flowing. There's struggles and mistakes. But I filled in the backstory, and I've done that. I just picked his name because I think a lot of people recognize his name, but it's true for all people I meet. But we've all gone through these ebbs and flows. So here's something I've done, and I have this on me right now, and I've had it on probably for the last 2 years. When I had this realization, like this was my big realization about humanity. It's like, oh my gosh, that infinity sign is the human journey. Like we keep going, and it's figure 8, and all of us are on the same pathway. And while one person at the moment seems to be successful, and one other person is down on their luck, you know what? They're exactly the same. We're looking at each other from different parts on this infinity loop, and we can both serve each other. We're just in a different part of our own journey. It's all about sharing. And so when I'm much better now than filling in the backstory and saying, oh, life was handed to them and they didn't struggle, to realize everyone's had their own version of struggles, and there's something to learn from everybody, from everyone I meet. Even if they look like they're down on luck now, they got something to share. Or if they look like they're successful now, they have something to share. We always have this pathway. So I don't know. I'm kind of rambling a little bit there.
I love the infinity loop as well, the infinity sign. And I've thought a lot about it on the creative's journey, where there are periods of and even the business building journey of a super intense productivity, focus, flow, momentum. We're flying. And then sometimes after a launch, there's total and utter retreat, rest, sometimes burnout, where you just collapse, or you're in what Penny and I call a goose state, or you're just
goose state.
State. You're like, who am I? What is this? What is life? I know we're almost out of time, and I'm feeling myself like, Jenny, don't ask another question, but I'm actually dying to know. So maybe you can just give us a brief response before we close out. You've written at least a lot of your recent books with a writing partner, AJ, who you thank in the acknowledgements. Can you just give us a quick snapshot of what's it like to write with a partner? Just what's your process? I think a lot of people don't want to write alone, or they can't find the motivation to do it. And you've been so successful at it.
Yeah. So, there's this third option. So you can write alone. You can use a ghostwriter who writes for you, or you can.
And by the way, I'm with you on the integrity about ghostwriting. Sorry to interrupt. There's a ghost in your book. Like there's no soul in it. If you
that's a good way of seeing it. Yeah, it just
and that person and then you're putting your name on something that I don't know. It's so weird to me. At least put them as a co-author. There's
exactly.
Continue.
I don't. A ghostwriter doesn't work for me. So a co-writer is someone who writes with you, and we do it in iterations. So I write the first version of the book, which is it's not even a book. It's just this ugly vomit of text. And then AJ will kind of we'll talk about it, and AJ will compile it into this much more cohesive flow, and then I'll write stories and back and forth. It starts ping-ponging back and forth. The result is the process is arduous. So for me to write a book, the average book takes me 5 years. And so I have people how do you turn out a book every year or two if it takes you 5 years? Well, I'm writing 4 books right now. There's 4 different, I have a book coming out April 28th. That's Fixed Next. But I have another book called Different is Better. I'm preparing for release in 2021, probably end of the year.
I'm sensing another book club.
Oh, Different is Better. Yeah, I'm really pumped about this book.
Can't wait.
And I have the Disadvantage Advantage coming out. And so I have all these books kind of queued up. But AJ and I go back and forth writing on it. And, AJ's job is, she's an extraordinary writer, better than I am by far. So she can when I write 10 words, she can communicate that in 6 words as better. She's also beats the drum on simplicity. She is, to the point of I want to pull my now thinning hair out. And she's like, Mike, we got to make this simpler. I'm like, oh my God, you cannot make it simpler. I'm like, ugh, and back to the drawing board. So she forces me back to the drawing board over and over again if a concept is not simple enough, and holds me accountable for that. So, and we've agreed, and it's appropriate that she's not going to be an author of the book. So she's not a co-author or author of the book. She's a writing partner, and I give her accolades and attribution in every single book. And she's built a business. She doesn't do it just for me. She does it for other people too, and has built a very successful business doing this. So yeah, that's AJ Harper. Amazing human.
Awesome.
Amazing.
I love hearing the details of you do the messy first draft and she simplifies. My dad's really good. We call it Occam's razoring, because Occam is the whole principle of Occam's razor is, if it can be said.
I know Occam's razor. Yeah, that's basically what it is. It gets to the most simple form because that's usually the solution.
So we call it razoring. All right, Dad, razor this one,
Oh, that's cool. Razoring. Yeah. I may pull for that from you if that's
Please
cool.
do. I want to end with a quote from the end of your book. You say, "Your business is the greatest platform for self-expression and to be of service. It is a powerful force that, when channeled, will deliver the most miraculous experiences to you." If you could leave listeners with one Fix This Next, one piece of homework or something to try when they stop listening, what would it be?
I think the greatest thing I think they could do is really get clarity on purpose. So I didn't include this in any of my books yet. I don't know if I ever will, but one of the interviews I did, I don't recall the person's name, it was a psychologist. I was asking her, I said, how do you find your life's purpose? Because I was trying to figure out, how do you translate life's purpose into a business? And she goes, oh, it's the big T or the little T. I said, what are those? And she goes, the big T is a big trauma in your life. She goes, sadly for many of us, we've experienced a big trauma of physical or sexual abuse or financial trauma, something to that effect. And she goes, that moment when you look at it is a defining moment that many of us will say, I will never allow this to happen to myself or anyone again. She goes, that is a call to purpose to fix this for others and ourselves. She goes, then there's the little T's. And I'm like, what's the little T's? Because that's the drip assaults. You're picked on in high school or grade school over and over again. And just at a certain point, that building drip campaign of trauma becomes this moment of, I will never allow this to happen again, or I will fix this or resolve it. And she goes, there's 1/3. She goes, there's one other element that can happen for some people too, is the childhood dream. The one day I will. She goes, that can come at purpose too. And, for me, it was financial trauma. It doesn't have to happen in your childhood, by the way. It can happen any time in life. But the financial trauma happened to me, and that was the moment I said, oh my gosh, I'm never going to allow another entrepreneur to struggle like I did. I'm never going to allow myself to struggle like that again. And I realized it was more than just financial. It was all these other areas of working my ass off and those other things. I was sacrificing life itself to start business. So I just encourage everyone, spend time finding your purpose. And it's not, at least for me, it wasn't like, oh, next morning I woke up and I got it. I mean, it took years and years of thought. But if you start investing time and thinking about your purpose, and maybe you already know it, but if you start thinking about it and then you build your business around that purpose, you become unstoppable. Like I would rather take on Jeff Bezos than take on someone that's devoted to their purpose. That purpose person, because Jeff Bezos, I'm not picking on Jeff Bezos here, but someone with wealth will exhaust those funds. Purpose is unexhaustible. That is someone that can't be defeated.
Amazing. Mike, thank you so much. And listeners, don't forget, you can get show notes and the template from this episode, pivotmethod.com/160. And please go out and pre-order. This book is out in April. So let's all support Mike's launch. Pre-order the book. It's called Fix This Next. And even better is on launch day, leave an Amazon review. So it's out April 28th. And I don't think, well, maybe listeners, maybe but it is such a boost for authors like Mike. And he's been so generous. You've been so generous with your time. And let's help him out as much as we can, because Mike, the reason I'm still in business is in such a large part thanks to you. Thank you so much.
Jenny, thank you. This was so much fun.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Pivot Podcast. Make sure you don't miss an episode or my insider tips and templates by signing up for Pivot List, a curated twice monthly newsletter where I share the inside scoop on what I'm reading, watching, listening to, and the latest tools I'm geeking out on. Sign up at pivotmethod.com/pivotlist. Get show notes from this episode at pivotmethod.com/podcast and connect with me on Twitter at Jenny_Blake. Remember, build first, then your courage will follow. Hasn't it always?